All right, Bimang, today is Tuesday. It's May 2nd. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Of course, I'm here with Chief. Chief, how are you doing today?
Can I be honest?
Yeah.
Struggling.
Mm-hmm. It's May, but
we got
still
global,
don't feel
global,
like May.
Global cooling going on.
It's rainy, it's cold, but that's normal.
I feel like it didn't used to be. I feel like May like Derby weekend, that first week of May, you knew May was going to be some pretty good weather.
Well, I've told you, I think everything's pushed back a month.
Yeah, we've
talked about
global
this.
daylight savings.
Like September is like almost summerish now.
It's definitely summerish.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know what to make
like
of that.
June is like almost a coin flip now, I feel.
Am I like having
amnesia?
Or what is that? We've done a podcast on it. I forget it.
Forgetfulness?
The Berenstein Bears thing.
Mandela effect.
And forgetfulness. Thank you. You are sharp today. But I feel like
which is rare
as a kid.
Rare in general.
As a kid, or even like, the last week of college was always right around now. I always felt like I remember like girls laying out in the quad like in early May.
You're right about that.
I am right about that.
Right about
I know. So then, like, when did this happen where it was like this extended winter forever? It is different.
Well, we did get one great week, so.
Was it a full week?
Yeah, it was a full week.
Okay.
We had like a Sunday and a Saturday and Sunday.
It was like April 5th to like the 12th or maybe.
The gopher popped its head up from the hole.
Yep.
Scurry
right back under. I went to one Cubs game during that stretch. It was nice.
Yeah, beautiful. Hey, speaking of weather, how about a company that is there for you regardless of what's going on?
They got everything.
That's talking about RHOBACK Activewear. We love RHOBACK. Best fit, best feel. The quality, the comfort, the material, everything is just top notch. Look at that hat, Chief's wearing. I got the performance hoodie right here.
I got one too.
Yes, you do. This could not be better weather for it, to be honest with you. It's light, it's breathable, but it's,
This is the one where it's like you don't know what the weather's going to be.
Yes.
So if you get up in the morning, you're walking the dog, you're like, oh shit, it's 40 degrees. You throw this on, you're good. You walk home, the sun's been out, it's 65, you're still good.
Yeah, exactly. So go check these out. They're super soft, super comfortable. And they also got the performance joggers. They are the most comfortable joggers on the planet. You're not going to want to miss out. They're functional, versatile, comfortable. They check off every box. We love RHOBACK here at Barstool Chicago. There's just something different, and you got to buy it to try it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's the only pair of pants White Sox Dave even wears is the joggers. So.
Yeah, so get ready for spring with RHOBACK. Use code DOG on RHOBACK.com for 20% off your first purchase. That's RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance hoodies, joggers, and polos with code DOG at RHOBACK.com. Go check out RHOBACK and act quick because this promo code does expire. So go do it.
Yep. Father's Day too, don't forget.
Dude, Father's Day for real. Father's Day RHOBACK would be a great gift.
My sister just, true story, she just texted me about like, oh, do you want to go in on this gift for Dad? And I'm like, nah, I'm getting him RHOBACK stuff. Like, you're on your own.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
I like that.
Yeah.
Shout out RHOBACK.
Shout out.
All right, so today in Tuesday Dog Walk, we're going to talk about a powerful family.
Powerful family that has had nothing but tragedy. And it kind of, in a way, reminds me of like the Kennedys, and I kind of want to do the Kennedys. Kennedys are hot in the streets again.
Yeah, the guys
RFK Jr. running for president, up over 20% polling now. But we're not talking about the Kennedys. We're talking about the Gettys.
Okay. We're talking about the Gettys. RFK Jr. You know who else this reminds me? Well, I don't want to get into it after you tell the story.
Well, we got time.
But you said like there's like a lot of tragedy, obviously.
Yeah.
You know who is sneaky? Also has like a ton of tragic shit around him. Is Frazier? What's his name? Kelsey Grammer.
Oh,
dude,
I don't know much about him.
Maybe we should do a dog walk on him because he is like his life has been
fucked.
Not the easiest. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of very tragic things have happened to Kelsey Grammer.
Damn.
Yes, he has like a very dark Wikipedia page.
Okay.
But all right, sorry, the Gettys.
The Gettys. So we're going to focus on one guy in particular, like J. Paul Getty. He's not like the founder of the company. It was actually his father, but he took it to extraordinary heights. And we're talking this guy all-time scumbag. All-time scumbag. So
The dad or the kid?
John Paul Getty. So the dad died, I want to say in 1930, but they kind of founded this business together, which was an oil company. So I hear Getty, and we were talking about this beforehand. I immediately, in this day and age, and maybe it's just because of our job where we're blogging, we have to use images, Getty Images. I feel like Getty Images owns every single picture ever taken. That's how it feels.
Yeah, for my old job, I used to have to download a lot of pictures and do stuff like that. And Getty was like always known as the best. We didn't have Getty, because the company was a little more on the lean side. They were trying to cut costs, but it was always like, motherfucker, Getty has this. It's more expensive, and we were just stuck with the the shit end of the
little
stick.
pull back the curtain, because we do that for if you're using a thumbnail for Barstool too, so we don't get sued for different images like we used to just get sued all the time for effectively stealing images. So we have this policy. All those photos that you see on that website are usually $11.25.
Yeah.
The Getty image. That's a fucking pretty penny. And if you think of every website on the planet basically uses those Getty images, they got to be raking in money, and we'll get to them at the very end. But that's not how they made their money as a family. They were oil people. They were like wildcatters. So like they were from Minnesota. I guess it's like the great grandpa was a lawyer, and he had a son named John Paul Getty, and they started this. They moved down to Texas and Oklahoma, and they started. It's kind of at the same time, and we've talked about Rockefeller before too, where Rockefeller like looked at the landscape and like, man, like all these people are making like literally like black gold Texas tea, like those things where it's like the Clampets, you become instant millionaires. But he's like, Rockefeller was like, that's very speculative, and I'm just going to set up a refinery. So all these people who strike it rich with oil, they have to come to me to turn it into kerosene, gasoline, whatever. But these guys went the other route. They went the wildcatter route, and then they would also buy up a ton of land and then lease it to different people who are trying to strike it rich. So if you leased it and then you struck oil on their land, you have to pay them a royalty. And that's kind of how they did it. And it worked brilliantly to the point that John Paul Getty, like I said, the son, by the age of 23, he had, and this is like, 1910 or whatever, had made $2 million and decided, I'm going to retire. So he's like, I got $2 million. And back then, $2 million was a lot of money. So he moved out to Los Angeles. And just to give you a little insight onto how this guy operated, he moved to LA with all this money and basically became like a Hollywood playboy. And he was known for having like these crazy parties and women around all the time. Between the years 1923 and 1936, he was married and divorced 4 times. Okay, so he had 5 children from 4 different women, and or I'm sorry, I'm not sure if he had children with all the women, but he had 5 children. His last wife, he actually got married a 5th time, but didn't have any kids with her. But his 4th wife, he had a child who had brain cancer, and refused to help the mother. He's like, you have to pay for the medical expenses out of your own pocket. And she was like, what the fuck? Like, you have all this money. And he wouldn't do it. And then the boy died. He didn't even go to the funeral of his own son who died of brain cancer. So like, we're talking an all-time scumbag,
not great
kind of guy. But a very shrewd, and like, there's all kinds of like little stories about him too. So he bought this unbelievable estate palace type thing in England. I think it was called the Sutton Place, for the equivalent of like $7 million in today's money. It's this grand palatial place, kind of like what's that show? It doesn't matter, but it's like this. It's this grand English countryside house with like 82 bedrooms. He installed a payphone into his house, so when he would have people over, he's like, "You can't use my house phone. You have to bring a nickel, and you have to pay for your own phone call." So it's just like, that's the kind of guy that he was, and being shrewd like that is probably part of why he was super successful. But it just made him like an all-time dickhead. But this was Getty, and it was Getty Oil, which is a company that I, as a 37-year-old, had never heard of. So I don't know if you had you heard of Getty Oil before?
No.
Okay.
Like all I knew was the images.
Yeah, that's all I knew too. Yeah. So I was like, how do these people become like these super rich picture people? But it was because they already had family money from the oil business. What are you looking up?
Something might have struck me. Are they involved with like racing or anything?
I'm sure they're involved.
That's maybe
in all
something
of,
that like
stuff.
Like something hit my brain. I was wondering if I have something.
I mean, maybe. And like there's multiple generations now that are involved in all sorts of different things. But so this guy was like a millionaire making money in oil and gas in the United States, primarily Texas and Oklahoma. And then in 1949, he travels over to Saudi Arabia and he sits down with the king. Okay, so the newly, they had become this country, but it was not everyone knew they had oil there, but he kind of did what he was doing in Texas, where he was leasing land to people, and then they would have to pay him a royalty. He kind of did that in reverse with Saudi Arabia. They owned all the land, so there's this massive, and they did this with Kuwait as well, but this massive empty field, desert, nobody lives there. He's like, I want that land. And at that time, there was all these different companies like competing for the rights to do oil prospecting in Saudi Arabia. And he just made him an offer that they couldn't refuse. He gave him $9.5 million up front. He's like, I'll pay you $1 million a year for 60 years. And I'll also give you 55 cents a gallon. So the king was like, that's like double what anybody else was offering. So he just dropped his nuts on the table, and then he spent $30 million of his own money setting up processing plants and doing the actual exploration. And in 1953, he hit it fucking big, and that's when the family became billionaires, because there's obviously, as everybody knows now, there is just an ocean of oil underneath the ground in Saudi Arabia. So they had this boom of wealth. And then he was able to parlay that into this like international network where he was going to take the oil that he was producing and refining in Saudi Arabia and send it to Europe and send it to South America and send it to the United States and send it to anybody who needed it. They were getting it from Getty Oil, and it became, for a time, the largest oil company in America, and they became one of the top. I mean, there's different reports, but some people say that there was a moment where they were he was the actual richest person on the planet. So they're still, to this day, not including the Getty Images business, still the 56th most wealthy family in the world.
Wow.
So there's, worth billions upon billions of dollars still. And it's, and that's divided amongst many people. But, not as many people as it could have been, because this family has just had like unspeakable tragedies, really starting in like the 60s and the 70s. So John Paul Getty Jr., he was seen as the heir to the Getty business, the Getty fortune, all of that. And he supposedly was the only child that his dad actually liked. He like kind of liked him like a little bit, but he was still just known as like a dick and kind of absentee father to all of his kids. So he was like, all right, you're going to go as part of your training to take over the whole business. You and your wife and your 4 kids are going to move to Italy, to Rome, and you're going to run our European division out of Rome. He's like, all right. He goes to Rome. While he's in Rome, he starts getting into drugs and like kind of living like this bohemian hippie lifestyle. Ends up divorcing his wife. His wife was named Gail, and marries this woman. She has a weird name, Talitha Paul. And she was like this, I think she was a Dutch actress and model, but she was living in Rome, like kind of, like barefoot, like just like in that full blown 60s, 70s, like hippie mode. Mm-hmm. And so he like ran off with her. She got pregnant. The father was so mad at his son, who was supposed to be this heir. He's turned into this like drug addict, left his wife, like the whole thing, even though he was married 5 times, but like he was like, this guy's life is a wreck. He's supposed to be taking over the business. So he said, all right, here's the deal. You're going to leave that hippie model Dutch woman and you're going to get yourself sober. And if you don't do that, you're fired and you're out of the family business. You know what the son did?
Did not get sober.
Quit on the spot. Says, fuck you, I'm out. Because he knew that 40% of the family's financial interest was in a trust. So that trust was going to pay him $100,000 a year, which in today's money is the equivalent of $800,000.
Okay.
So he was like, I'm just gonna be with this woman, and my new son, and fuck my other kids, and I don't need like the billions upon billions. I'm gonna be making close to basically in today's money, close to $1 million a year, and then who knows what happens in the future when the dad dies. I'm sure he's like probably gonna get another big inheritance and the whole thing. So that's what he does. So he's out of the family business. Then they continue to go forward. He and that Talitha split. She goes back and moves to London with her son, and he's still staying in Rome, like fucking around, being a drug addict. He convinces her in the early 70s, to move back to Rome to be with him. He's like, I'll get cleaned up. She had gotten sober. Let's just do this. We'll do our life. She eventually comes back. She gets rehooked on drugs. She dies of an overdose in 1971. So that was like the first like bad situation. Then he had another son. His oldest son was George Franklin Getty. So George Franklin Getty, he had basically, kind of sounds like a more dramatic version of like Connor Roy in the show Succession, where he was like from one of the earlier marriages, had almost no contact with his father after the age of 10 years old. So all the contact that supposedly that he had with him was just through like written letters that would come like sporadically. So like imagine 10 years old, your dad's like one of the richest people on the planet. You don't know him at all, but you are the eldest son. But John Paul, like his dad, never liked him, never respected him. But after the other son had gone all insane on drugs, he made him the chief operating officer of of Getty Oil, and he had kind of had success on his own a little bit. He was like very involved. I think it was Bank of America. He had a big position there. He had another big job, but his father just gave him that title, and basically it was title only, and would just berate and belittle him publicly, and would just like go like make decisions without him, be like, you don't know what the fuck you're doing, just constantly beating down on him to the point that he developed alcoholism and a drug addiction, this other son. Okay. So, and he kind of went like insane. So he was June 6, 1973, George, and he's got a bunch of people at his house, is having a very heated fight with his wife, which I guess he did all the time. He runs into an upstairs bedroom, locks himself in there, has a shotgun. He's screaming that he's going to kill everybody, fires a shotgun in the air. Then he has a barbecue fork, stabs himself in the stomach.
Jesus.
Okay. Because he was on pills and drunk. So the family, they run in and they see him like bleeding out, and they're like, all right, this is a fucking problem, obviously. We're not going to take him to the nearby hospital because that'll be a big scandal. There's a private hospital, much further away. They arrange to take him to that hospital. He slips into a coma and dies.
Fuck.
Because they wouldn't take him to like, basically bled out, went unconscious and died. Stabbed himself. So that was the eldest son. Then you have John Paul Getty III. So Junior is the one that, we talked about, the Italian with the hippie wife, and she died. So he had another son, the third. He was living in Rome. And when he was 16, he was and this was, I guess, like a fairly common scheme by the Italian mob in Italy at that point, where they would do kidnapping and ransom. So they saw this kid, he's walking around some square in Rome. They snatch him, they throw him in the trunk, they drive him 300 miles south to Calabria, Italy, and they send a ransom note, and it was signed by John Paul III. They're asking for $17 million to release him. And so they go to Gail, the ex-wife and the mother of John Paul III, goes to the grandfather and goes, nah, I think that's a hoax. Okay, I think it's a hoax. So they don't get him out. Okay, so now it becomes, this ransom note gets published in the newspaper. So it becomes like, after 30 days, it becomes like this huge, like, international story. And so they're like begging to like get him out. They're sending like these threatening phone calls, threatening letters. And they finally get to the point where, and the grandpa, the asshole guy is just playing hardball. He's like, I'm not fucking paying to get this kid out. He goes, basically, like, I don't negotiate with terrorists. So if it's real, I got 14 grandchildren. I'm not getting if I pay this amount now, all of my grandchildren are going to get kidnapped, and I'll just, he's like, so I'm not paying a penny for him. That's what he said. And I think it was partially because they just didn't believe it was real. So the kidnappers cut off the kid's ear and some of he had like this distinct, like strawberry red hair, and sent that to a newspaper being like, we're going to cut this kid up bit by bit until we get our money, but we will reduce we'll reduce the ransom from 17 million to 3.2 million. And so now the grandpa's like, fuck, I guess it is real. Okay. Jesus. But he's like, I'm not paying 3.2 million. He's like, I'll give you 2 million. And he goes to the kid's father, who's like the drug addict that he's cut out of the family. And the father didn't have the money because he had been cut out of the family. He goes, you have to come up with the rest for your son. So the son's like, I don't fucking have it. Like, how do I get this? How do I get my son back? Like, I don't have it. He goes, all right, I'll lend you the other bit at a 4% interest rate.
Stop.
4% interest rate.
Good Lord. Okay,
for the remaining $1.2 million, whatever it was, to get his son back. And so they did it. But the son was, captured and held hostage for 5 months. For 5 months as they're like, penny pinching. He was one of the richest men in the world, and being like, I'm not fucking paying that. I'm not negotiating with terrorists. He's locked up like forever. Okay. So 5 months, and then they finally get him out, and then lo and behold, not a hoax at all. So he's out, like his ear's fucking gone. Mm-hmm. And he's tried to get his life together, the kid that got kidnapped. And he like had reconstructive surgery on his ear. He like enrolled at Pepperdine. He met a woman. They had a kid. And, but they have this history of drug addiction. So he fell into that too. And obviously he had been like kind of tortured and beaten up, like not terribly, like, but every time he said they would move him like every couple of weeks, and like they would, blindfold him and scream at him. So it was like a very obviously traumatic experience. So he gets big into drugs, and he had an overdose so bad that he had a stroke at the age of 24 and was left paralyzed and nearly blind. So he lived out, the kid who survived the kidnapping for the ransom, lived out the rest of his life, 30 years, in a wheelchair being cared for by his mother. So that was like what another kid, absolutely tragic life. So then you had the other son. Other son's name was Gordon. Gordon was kind of like the only straight shooter in the family. So, and he was named the sole trustee. So the father, John Paul I, he dies. Gordon becomes the sole trustee of Getty Oil. He sells it to Texaco for $10 billion and immediately gets sued by all the other members of the family, because they're like, you didn't get enough. You shouldn't have done that. We should have, but he's like, I'm the sole trustee. So they gave $1 billion in capital gains tax. And then basically every other member of the family got at least $750 million. So maybe like, shut the fuck up. Here's $750 million. Okay. So Gordon, he's involved in all these other business things. He's living out of San Francisco, and he's known as like this great guy. He's very philanthropic. He's got his wife. He's got 4 kids. It's like, man, at least they got one guy who, was able to escape this pattern of just horrible drug addiction and tragedy. Fast forward, I think it was like 1999. He has to give a press conference because this guy who was seen as such a good guy had a secret family the entire time. So he had his public family, wife and 4 kids in San Francisco. And then in LA, he had a mistress woman that he had 3 children with. So it wasn't just like an affair. It was like a years long thing where like he would go down to LA and spend the weekend with his other family that he kept secret like forever. And so they had a different last name. And then he had 3 daughters. The 3 daughters changed their last name to Getty and sued him to get in on like the family trust. So then he had to be like, fuck. But he never denied it. He was like, yeah, this is this other fucking family the entire time. And so, they got into the trust, and, but it was just like, even the one guy, that's the skeleton in the closet, an entire other fucking family.
The old Rush Probst.
What's that?
You remember the?
Oh yeah. The two-a-days guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? And like, what is your excuse on like holidays and stuff?
I don't know. Yeah.
So anyway, so he had the 3 daughters with that woman. Her name was the mother was named Cynthia Beck, and so he had to like he was still married. Like he never got divorced from his original wife, but it was just like, yeah, like hand up, I'm also a fucking scumbag, and so they did all the paternity tests, and he was the father, but he never really denied it either. And then, it just, kind of went on and on. Like there's just so many members of this family, and where, I talked about the one son that had cancer, and then there's like other grandchildren and great grandchildren who had all sorts of like drug addictions and suicides. And then there was like there was another like mysterious death where they still don't really know what happened, but his name was Andrew Getty. And Andrew Getty was one of the grandchildren. He died at 47 years old. So he had issues with drugs himself. And the story goes that supposedly he had felt ill for like months and months, but never went to the doctor. He finally calls and makes an appointment with the doctor. But before he can go, he collapses half naked in the hallway of his home. He's found by his ex-girlfriend, who he had a restraining order against. And because the cops have been called 31 times to come and break up like domestic violence things between the two of them over the years. And she supposedly was like trying to get at his money. But she was the one who, called the cops and was like, oh my God, like Andrew's dead. So they questioned her, but they never could like figure anything out. But there's like a lot of suspicion of foul play. They do an autopsy, and he had an ulcer that ruptured, that he like bled out in his stomach. He also had like an insane amount of meth in his system. So he had been like clean and sober for like years and years and years. And then all of a sudden there's like a ton of meth in his system, and he dies. And he's found by the woman who's not legally allowed to be in the house, who just stumbled over there and found him dead. But no one ever got to the bottom of that. So ever since then, they've been like kind of laying low and not been like this, because they were on like the cover of magazines, and they were like one of those families that was like these titans of industry and well known. I don't even know what the equivalent would be, like the fucking Kardashians or something now.
Yeah.
But Mark, who was a son of John Paul Jr., one of, the guy we talked about before, he was the guy who came up with Getty Images. So he had a partner, and they basically went, they saw like the market opportunity in stock images. So then they went head to head with Bill Gates. Gates had his own stock image company, beat him. This is like late 90s, early 2000s. And they continued to grow and grow and grow this business. They sold a big stake in the company to a private equity firm for $2.4 billion in 2008. And then, but they still had like controlling interest, and they were like part of the company. Sold it again, the remainder of it, to the Carlyle Group in 2012 for $3.3 billion. So they had like, so they had and there's been another grandson's like a semi-successful actor who's been in like Hawaii Five-0 and a few other things. But that's, but the family is just, and they have like this insane museum, because that's kind of where the trust came from, is that the original guy, the original patriarch of the family, his mother convinced him to set up that trust for 40% of the family's wealth, and they would just keep buying all this art. And then they would like, take out loans against it. They would donate it to their own museum, so it would be like tax-free. So they like really played the system beautifully. And that's where like all their family money still lives, is they get it from other places as well. But it was the big sale, and then the trust, which is, based largely around their insane art collection. Yeah. So it's wild. And it's, it's crazy that they're on their fourth generation and they still have all this money, but you don't really see that with some of these dynastic families. It was like the Vanderbilts are like a famous example of that, where they were Cornelius Vanderbilt and I believe his son too, were the richest family. Like they're wealthier for a time than the Rockefellers, and they built Vanderbilt University. They have that other place in Tennessee, blanking on the name of it now. It's like the biggest house in America. And then by like the next generation, so like I guess it would be the fourth generation, there wasn't one single member of the family that was even a millionaire, because they just blown through it all.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So like this family, like they had unspeakable tragedies and drug addictions and suicides and murders and, drug overdose, paralysis, all this kind of stuff. And not to mention they all fucking hated each other, but they managed to keep their money. And it is one of those things where it's like, money's just not necessarily everything or the key to anything, because it'll fuck you up.
Totally. But then also like don't get me wrong, like this does have a couple super details that makes it crazy, like the kidnapping, obviously the story, and then the two families is wild. But, sadly, a lot of the other stuff is not that uncommon in everyday families, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that it's like, like you guys should
be above it,
yes,
sort of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what makes it more like, whoa, like
everyone's
susceptible to this kind of shit.
There is something about where you have the patriarch who's married 4 times in 13 years.
Yeah.
And he has children that he like won't even go to their funeral.
Yeah.
It kind of sets the tone, I feel like, for a lot of this type of stuff. So
totally.
And he was known as a womanizer. Like if you go to John Paul, and his is Jean Paul. The other kids are John Paul, but they're still considered juniors. I don't know how the fuck that works, but if you go to like his Wikipedia page, it'll list his 5 wives, and then he also has a section for partners, because he had just had a ton of women all the time that were like known girlfriends while he was having these marriages too. So
that's what he did.
Yeah, the guy just had a insatiable appetite.
Yeah, for sure.
A hungry dick.
Yeah, hungry dick.
Yeah.
All right. Wild shit.
Yeah, you're not. You just think that's a run of the mill family.
No, I mean obviously not. I said that those two situations make it like more over the top.
Yeah,
but
see, I feel like you could do like a Succession show about this family. It'd be
100%,
more compelling.
100%. Yeah, but it's also like this shit happens.
I know.
You know,
drugs fuck you up. Don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs.
Stay off meth and heroin, because that was like the big problem. They're all on like heroin and the booze.
Damn.
Stay away from heroin, kids.
Stay away.
Yep.
All right then, Chief. Thank you. Thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for watching. Leave a like, leave a comment. It helps us on the YouTube. Besides that, we'll be back tomorrow with a free swim. We will see you then.